7:20. Good morning this morning. Big 550 KTRS. Let's go to John Christy. He's a climatologist with the University of Alabama, Huntsville. Good morning, doctor. Welcome to Big 550 KTRS. Doctor, are you there?
Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Good. Let's get right to it. Where do you stand on this climate change, global warming debate?
Well, I like to stand on what the observations tell us, which is what the real world is doing, and the real world tells us that not much is happening other than has already happened in the past.
Okay. Can you expand on that? The glaciers are melting. Some scientists are saying that there's large amounts of carbon dioxide in the air, which is melting the ice caps, which is creating all sorts of issues. You say that's what?
Well, the Earth has warmed in the past 150 years, and ice naturally melts as a result. Prior to that time, ice was actually increasing on the planet. You might not know that Glacier National Park had very few glaciers just 4,000 years ago, but that changed. So it turns out that there are a lot of natural fluctuations, and that the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere is really not having that much of an effect on what's naturally occurring.
So what is it that Neil deGrasse Tyson it gets wrong that you think is right, or vice versa?
He believes what climate models say, and I am the group that actually tests climate models, and we show them to be well out of the range of what the real world is doing. So we don't trust their results because they can be demonstrated to be false.
I don't know. He says that we're burning fossil fuel at rates never seen before, which is putting the CO2 into the air, which is creating the greenhouse effect, which is melting the ice caps, and it's humans who are doing it. You obviously disagree. Why?
Well, right. That's a very convenient and easy answer for someone who doesn't study the climate system carefully. I think what you will find is that we are burning carbon. There's no question about that, and India and China are far ahead of the United States and North America in that regard. So whatever the U.S. does is not going to matter in terms of CO2 emissions. But what they never talk about is how many millions of people have been lifted out of terrible poverty because of the energy that carbon provides. They never talk about that.
I know, but we're not talking about that. That's not the argument. The argument is CO2 being sent into the air because of our burning of our fossil fuels, whether in the U.S. or in China or in Russia or wherever, which is then creating a greenhouse effect, which is then warming the planet.
Okay, that's a good question. Yes, the carbon dioxide is increasing because we are burning carbon for energy. I mean, there's a good reason for burning that carbon. But the theory about how that affects the climate, that is expressed in climate models, and that's the work we do that demonstrates these climate models are they're far off in terms of showing what is actually happening in the world versus what they claim CO2 is doing to the world. So that's the scientific part we are able to test.
Okay, I'm confused. I'm a layman. I'm not a scientist. I listen, and I'm trying to be educated on all of this. I don't understand. You're saying he's taking your climate models and coming to a different conclusion?
Well, they're not my climate models. They're climate models paid for by tens of millions of dollars per year by the federal government. And these climate models, when you put carbon dioxide in them, they show a fairly rapid warming of the planet. We are the ones who build climate data sets of the real world, and we compare that with what the models say is supposed to have happened over the past few decades. And what we show is that what the models with their carbon dioxide show for the climate does not match at all what the actual climate is doing.
So you're saying their climate models in a lab aren't real-world examples?
They do not match the real world, that's correct, which tells you that the theory about how carbon dioxide works has something wrong with it.
So you're saying that the CO2 that we're putting into the atmosphere by our man-made burning of fossil fuels is warming the globe or not warming the globe?
I happen to think it's warming the globe, but it's a fairly small amount and one that we can't really do anything about. But I have to disagree with you a little bit. We are talking about the fact burning carbon does enhance human life, and so there is a reason for burning the carbon.
Yeah, I'm not
that in the equation.
I'm not arguing. I haven't made a judgment one way or the other whether burning carbon is good or bad. That's not the argument or the discussion here. But we can both agree it's factually correct. We are burning carbon. Carbon is getting into the air. There's more carbon in the air than ever before. Now, the question I have for you as the scientist is that other scientists are saying that is creating warmth in the atmosphere, which is creating the ice caps to melt, which is creating climate change. Then they'll say, the likes of which we haven't seen, all because of our man-made what we are doing. You say...
That is not quite right. The carbon dioxide has been in the atmosphere many times more than what it is today. So in the past of our geologic history, CO2 has been much higher in the past. So we are putting back carbon dioxide into the atmosphere in amounts that aren't nearly what they were before. But to the heart of the question about what is carbon dioxide doing to the climate, that is what I just mentioned, that when we test the models about what it's doing, they don't match. But you can look back in the climate history and see times when the ice caps have melted. By the way, the sea ice in the Antarctic is actually growing. It's not melting. And see times in the past when the glaciers have melted, when sea level has been higher than it is today because that's all happened. So what I'm saying is the kinds of changes we're seeing today have occurred in the past without this carbon dioxide influence.
I just saw a movie, and it's called Chasing Ice, and it's a documentary. And in that movie, scientists, they say that the overwhelming majority of glaciers are receding. You disagree with that?
No, not since 1850. That was not done by a scientist, by the way. That was done by a photographer. I've seen the thing.
Okay. But in this movie, they say that the glaciers, an overwhelming number of glaciers, are receding. Do you agree with that or disagree with that?
I agree with that if you say it correctly, that the glaciers have been receding since 1850. Prior to that time, they were advancing.
I know, but you just said that they're advancing in Antarctica.
No, that's sea ice. That's the ice that covers the ocean. It has been advancing in Antarctica.
Oh, I see. So you agree that it's receding. You just disagree as to the reason why.
Yes, that's right. Because when they put the reason why in climate models, it does not match the real world.
Right.
And so we got a problem there.
Okay. They also say, Dr. Christy, that 98% of the scientists agree that climate change and global warming is man-made. They say, 2 or 3% don't. Is that accurate? And why are there so many scientists, in your opinion, are wrong?
No, that's not accurate. That was from a very vague poll that was actually added up only about 77 scientists out of 10,000. And when the professionals of the American Meteorological Society was asked a question like that, they only came up with 53%. And so that is hardly a consensus at all. And it tells us that climate is a very murky science, and we know we don't know nearly as much about it as we should.
Right. So the science is not complete. So it could be man-made, or it could be just Mother Nature doing its thing.
Or the best answer is a combination of both, and it looks like the part that's human-made is pretty small.
Right. So you would have no problem for us to sort of take off all of our regulations on clean air and burning fossil fuel, and you'd love to see lead back in gasoline and all that type of stuff?
No, you've really mischaracterized it. I am talking about carbon dioxide, not about all the toxic pollutants that we've been able to take out of our burning industry. So I'm only talking about the good gas, carbon dioxide, the thing that plants love that used to be 4, 5, 10 times what it is in the atmosphere.
So you would have no problem with taking off those restrictions for carbon dioxide?
Carbon dioxide is not a problem for the atmosphere, that's right.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're what percentage.
We got to go. We got to go. That's Dr. John Christy, a climatologist with the University of Alabama. Doctor, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You got it. 7:30.